Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video. So today I want to talk a little bit about the future of the Battlefield franchise and whether or not broken Battlefield releases are to be the new normal. And in this video I want to reference a couple of articles that have been released in the last couple of days, because it really feels like those articles in particular are sort of trying to gaslight us into believing that if you release a game and it's broken, it's just fine if you fix it afterwards. So we're going to take a look at those. But before we do that, however, I do want to touch lightly on Season 6. DICE have just dropped a new little bit of lore, a little bit of a story from Pike here. And whilst I don't have a massive interest in the lore of Battlefield 2042, this particular piece here actually does tell us a little bit about the new map that is coming. Guys, before we begin, do not forget to subscribe if you do enjoy the Battlefield content here on the channel. Hit me up on Twitter or join the Discord if you want to play or have a chat to me. As always, the Twitch channel is also up and running as usual, so you can also find me there. And as always, guys, thanks for the support. Okay, so you guys remember my video from a few days ago now. We found these missing in action posters within Battlefield 2042. Those led us to some coordinates, and those coordinates led us to an island off the coast of Scotland called Bore. And as such, we started speculating that, of course, the next map coming in Season 6 must be on this island. However, today DICE actually dropped an official piece of lore for the game, and I'm just going to read the beginning of it here. So this is from the position or the perspective of G. Sue Pike. So she says here, "They came for me at 0400. Baiting the squad was easy. They are mercenaries hired to extract individuals under duress. Making myself Boreas's target, on the other hand, had taken weeks." So it sounds here that Boreas's mercenaries are trying to kidnap Noparts to do these experiments on them, and Pike here has essentially let herself be kidnapped by these guys. So then she goes on here to say, "We reached the island in 6 hours. Processing in the lab was a checklist of simple, degrading cruelties, but the hardest part was not telling the Noparts next to be in line that help had finally arrived." So you can obviously tell that she's undercover here, but this is the interesting bit of it, is that she says we reached the island. So I think that pretty much confirms it there. Season 6's map is going to be on an island. I'm assuming that is this island where we were looking at the other day, Bore. If you guys want to learn more about that, go and check this video out here. I covered everything in that one there. So yeah, again, very interesting to see how that's going to play out. Is it going to be an underground facility? Are we going to get any kind of naval action going on there with it being an island surrounded by other smaller islands? Or are we going to get some kind of a new jet? I really just don't know what the new vehicle is going to be at this point. It's going to come as a complete surprise, I think. But all I'm praying for is that it's not just going to be another transport vehicle. Okay, moving on, let's just talk a little bit about Battlefield 2042, how far the game has come, and the fact that DICE have, you know, repaired the game. They made it playable. It's definitely a lot better than it was when it released. But on the other hand, most of the articles that I read about this are kind of from the perspective that DICE are doing us all a massive favor, and we're sort of being gaslighted, at least it feels to me here, into thinking that we should all be so thankful for DICE for repairing the game, and that they're just doing it out of the kindness of their hearts and to help out the community. Whereas in actuality, they need to fix their game because they messed it up in the first place. But the first article here is called "Battlefield 2042 Once Again Proves DICE is the King of Comebacks." I'm not really sure that the King of Comebacks is a title that DICE should be wearing loud and proud. You know, if you have to make a comeback for your game, then that would insinuate that the game wasn't very good to begin with, so surely it would just be better to make the game a winner at the start of the release so that people will actually still play it and not have to make a comeback at all. So there are a couple of paragraphs here that I want to reference in this particular article, and this is the first one here. It says, "It would have been easy for DICE to call it quits on the game after seeing the poor Battlefield 2042 review scores and overwhelming player outrage. However, it instead decided to stick with the title and address player complaints, with Battlefield 2042 now being a genuinely enjoyable first-person shooter." So yeah, I agree, they definitely did a great job making the game better. The game has seen a lot of improvements. I think the map reworks on the whole have been good. Some of them are better than others. But on the other hand, we've always got to go back and think, if all of these features that they've been slaving away adding to the game had been there at release, like the class system, the squad system, the scoreboard, the all chat, you name it, all of these things that should have been there on release and they've been toiling away, adding to the game, using up precious developer hours, means less content for us overall, right? As for it being easy for DICE to call it quits on the game after seeing the poor Battlefield 2042 review scores, I completely disagree with that. Let's first of all remember here that they promised us 4 seasons of content for the game, so had they just decided to bail on all of that content, I'm not sure if they would have been recourse for legal action or something along those lines. At the very least, they probably would have had to refund the people with the Gold and Ultimate editions because those 4 battle passes were included in those versions of the game. So let's be honest here, they didn't really have much of a choice. They needed to come and fix the game here, not out of the goodness of their hearts or to please the players, but because they messed up and they needed to fix it. And then he goes on here to say, while Battlefield has had some smooth launches like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4 was similarly messy. Well, similarly, you know, let's talk about that in a minute. Like Battlefield 2042, there were far too many bugs for most fans' liking, with painfully bad netcode on top of that. However, as DICE tends to do, Battlefield 4 was cleaned up and eventually became a strong entry in the series. The netcode issues were addressed, bugs were fixed, and the game became more memorable for its Megalodon Easter egg and Levolution than anything bad. So yes, that is true about Battlefield 4, the game did not release in a fantastic state, and yes, the game was much improved, and now it is fondly looked back upon as one of the better Battlefield games. However, I think to compare the launch of Battlefield 4 to 2042 is just completely wrong and black and white. Battlefield 4's problems at launch were bugs, balance issues, netcode issues, more things of that nature. If you now go and look at what they've had to change in 2042, they had to remake every single map in the game. They had several core features that were missing that they had to then add into the game after release. Neither game was perfect on release, I'll admit that, but to compare this launch to Battlefield 4's launch is definitely somewhat misleading. And then he ends the article here saying, ultimately, DICE has proven that it should not be counted out whenever its games launch in a disappointing state. The developer clearly cares about its projects and its community, putting in the work to make up for its mistakes whenever they do happen. While it would obviously be better if every game launched without problems, and having multiple rough launches in the last decade has been hugely frustrating, players can at least rest assured that DICE's games will eventually live up to their potential. Hopefully the next DICE game is excellent from the start, but until it releases, fans may want to try out the vastly improved Battlefield 2042. Now, I do agree with him in some ways here. Yes, the game has been massively improved, and I do think if you're a player who has picked up the game at launch, put it down instantaneously, you should come back if you haven't already and give the game a go, because it really is a lot better than it was at launch. I feel that's the reason that the player base is still relatively low. DICE just lost too many of the core Battlefield crowd on launch here, and no matter what they do with the game, that ship has sailed, it's too late, and a lot of those players aren't going to come back. But what I do see consistently in terms of feedback from players is that people who do come back from the game are saying it's night and day, you know, they've done a fantastic job reworking the maps and reworking the game and adding in all of these features. Similarly, I also see a lot of new players who are maybe picking up 2042 on the cheap, perhaps as their first Battlefield title, saying things like, I don't really understand what all of the hate is about, Battlefield 2042 seems like a great game to be. And I can understand that in some ways. I've always said since this game released and people asked me if I recommended it, as a game, for the money it's costing at the moment, which I believe is somewhere around $20 you can usually pick it up for, it's definitely worth that amount of money to me. However, this is not just some game. This is a AAA title, and not only that, it is the next game in the Battlefield franchise. And therefore, people are going to compare it, yes, to the previous titles in that franchise and where the bar has already been set. And if you fall way below the bar like 2042 did, then people are going to hold you accountable. So whilst I do think DICE deserve credit for what they've been doing here and improving the game, at the same time, it just feels like these articles are designed to sort of make us okay with this, as if to say, hey, if DICE release the next Battlefield game and it's kind of a flop at launch, don't worry, they'll fix it down the road. It might take a couple of years, but it'll turn out to be a decent game. Like, is that really where we're at now, where people are starting to sort of get gaslighted into thinking that that's okay, or having 7 maps on launch is okay, and then them just reworking all of those maps is acceptable. I don't know about you guys, but I'm definitely not okay with that. As always, guys, leave me your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like as well. Of course, subscribe for more Battlefield content here on the channel. Go and follow my Twitch channel if you want to hang out and play some games there as well. Have a good one, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.